Welcome to episode 60 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a PhD candidate in molecular science and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Lisa Cove, founder, packaging and food safety consultant for CoMotion Packaging Solutions. CoMotion Packaging Solutions guides food entrepreneurs through scaling their business with packaging industry and food safety expertise. Throughout her career, she has worked with brands like Ferrero, Kinder, Nutella, and Tic Tac, all leaders in packaging development. Her expertise with private labels includes Sobeys, Loblaws, Nestle, Food Lion, Kroger, and more. On this episode, Lisa told me more about CoMotion Packaging Solutions and what a few days look like for her as a founder. Lisa shared her story about how she got into the packaging industry despite having a degree in criminology from Wilfrid Laurier University. It's a really interesting story about how that happened. Lisa shows that you don't have to rush into a career if you're not sure if you'll like it or not. You can always find ways to mitigate the risk of not being sure what you want to do, but in the end, still find something that you're passionate about doing. Lisa also shared with me what sustainable packaging is and the things you need to consider when designing the product. We rounded out the episode by talking about the process of becoming a certified packaging professional and some of the food brands that she would like to promote. So, enough with that introduction. Let's get on with the show. So, thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to come on the show. I think that the field you're in is such a big point of conversation right now, and consumers are looking to people like you to help come up with solutions to these problems because we need the help. We need the help. So I'm excited to learn more about you, what you do, and how you're addressing these big world issues.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
Well, I'm going to just jump right into it. And could you tell me more about yourself and what you do in CoMotion Packaging Solutions?
Sure. Yeah. A day in the life of my business. I own CoMotion Packaging Solutions. I help scaling food businesses fill their knowledge gaps in the area of packaging and food safety. So I specialize in both those topics. When I started working in packaging, I was doing a little bit of sales and distribution. And I realized that there was a huge gap and not a lot of support in the area of packaging, and especially for those scaling up food businesses. We have a huge ecosystem of food manufacturing in Ontario, but we don't have a lot of the support systems in every place that we need them. And packaging is one of those areas. So clients could typically come to me with questions specific to their packaging, like where do I get it from? How do I save some money? My background is in purchasing. So I do have some tips and tricks to sourcing some good costs for packaging. Obviously, we're in a different world right now where things are a little bit more expensive with shipping costs and inflation and et cetera. But I work with my clients on sourcing, determining what the right packaging is for their food products. So sometimes they're just not sure what to put it in. And we want to promote shelf life and functionality of food. So we use packaging to do that. So they might have other questions for me as well: how to navigate getting a UPC for their food label, how to create a nutrition facts table and what that looks like, and even sourcing packaging machinery or machinery for them to able to automate their process a little bit to go a little bit faster, to produce a little bit more. And I can help with that. I do label reviews and I do a lot of food safety work as well, like training for food safety, HACCP training, and reviewing food safety programs in manufacturing sites. The vast amount of work that I do with my clients is definitely there, and every day looks different, and I never know what's coming down the pipeline.
I love that. You've pointed out one of the things that I think about new food businesses or those new entrepreneurs. They have a great product, everything is all lined up, and they probably think about what the packaging design looks like in terms of the graphic standpoint, but then it comes to actually going to that next step of the packaging. And I feel that is a whole new world. So it's good to know that there's like people like you that they can go to for advice, because I wouldn't even know where to start, like in terms of sourcing these types of things.
For sure. And that 100%. So I do a lot of work with incubator programs, helping small businesses scale up their packaging. And the first thing that I like to teach is that we want to think about packaging our food products through our whole planning process. So yes, it's easy to just think, this is what I want on my label, this is how I want my brand to look or be reflected. But packaging itself is such a huge investment it takes from your bottom line. And if you get it wrong, you may have to invest once or twice or three times into packaging. So if you can look at it and plan it through your whole process, that's really what I encourage. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. We can fix it as well.
So a lot of those things that you discussed, I definitely want to go a little bit deeper into them later, but I have to jump into knowing a little bit more about how you got here, because I know that you did purchasing in that, but I also know that you have a degree in criminology, and I want to know how the heck you ended up where you are now. Would you be able to talk more about your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
I'd love to. Yeah, for sure. Everybody kind of wonders, how did I get here? It's a big question that comes up. And anybody who works in the packaging industry will probably, like, not anybody, but a lot of people will come back and say it's a work of passion. So, yes, I studied criminology and a general BA in contemporary studies at Wilfrid Laurier. I always had the dream to become a lawyer. So I went into the criminology degree, which is basically sociology with a criminal focus. And the path was to lead me to law school. But as I was completing my BA, I just didn't feel like it was a good fit for me to go to law school. I really wanted to get into a working career. I didn't really know exactly what that was going to be, but I didn't know enough about the world yet at that point, I think, to make that informed decision. So I just got out there, and someone recommended that I submit my resume to a temp agency who ended up bidding me for a part-time, sort of, no, it was full-time, but it was not a long position. So maybe a semi-permanent position at Ferrero Canada, which is a chocolate factory. So who would not want to work at a chocolate factory? So of course I took the job. It was a purchasing assistant role. So it's a lot of filing of purchase orders and just getting to know the requisitions that were coming in from the maintenance team and the energy team. And I got to work with all these people. And that is where my passion for food manufacturing came to life. Before working in the food world, I didn't even know this world really existed. So I didn't know that manufacturing was so cool. I didn't know that the food industry was so interesting to me. Obviously, not to everyone. The food industry was definitely became interesting to me. That was just like starting to tap into the moving parts. I was trying to get myself involved in as much as I could at work to learn about the equipment, learn about everything. And I stayed there. I wasn't just a temporary role with them. I ended up becoming a junior buyer in technical purchasing, where I was involved with capital purchases of new manufacturing lines and new equipment for energy consumption and warehouse projects. So it was really interesting, and it was really a world I didn't even know was there. Um, and really what happened was I spent a few years at Ferrero, and I still had dreams of practicing law, and I wanted to make sure that the food industry was what I wanted to pursue, or was it the law? So I did go to an accelerated program at Conestoga College and completed their postgraduate paralegal program. After a 6-week internship at a law firm, I really 100% decided that the law it was not for me. It was not what I wanted to do. And my passion was in manufacturing world. So lucky for me, Ferrero had another temporary position open it wasn't in technical purchasing, it was in raw materials and packaging. So I took the temporary position, which again turned into a long-term work with Ferrero, and I was able to visit manufacturing sites of all of our packaging suppliers, learn about different substrates and why we use packaging and what we can do to make it better. We had lots of meetings, and I traveled all over the world with Ferrero learning about packaging, and it was a passion I didn't even know I had, and it just opened up the world to me.
That's amazing. And one thing that I actually like a little bit about your story is that you actually still thought about going back to maybe being a paralegal. Like, you didn't just do a full one, like 360 turn to go and continue with the food, but you did have some of that hesitation, which I really enjoy, because I know that a lot of stories we hear about people just drop everything and then go to the next step. But it seems like you took more of a risk, like you tested the risk in the sense of, is this still for me? So I think that's really cool.
100%. Thank you. Yes, I definitely did. And what I realized was, because I am a person who tries to stick to my path that I've chosen and have these pillars of things that are important to me. And one of the things was making sure that the career path that I chose was where I wanted to be. You only live one time. You have to be happy in what you're doing. And I knew after testing the waters that the legal field was not where I was going to be most happy. I think that we looked at certain careers as they're good jobs, or that's where you aspire to be, but really you should be somewhere where you're passionate, and the food industry was like that. So my career continued to grow like an apprenticeship in the food industry, where I took in as much information from the people around me who were the experts. And I saw every opportunity I could and used it to grow my knowledge base. So I just kept taking on different projects and listening and really just being astute as possible where I could take advantage of any opportunity of growth that was there.
I think that again, I think that's great because I've always been in the believer of I think your story highlights something as well because I know that students always get told follow your passion. If you follow your passion, you're gonna be do like what you're like and all these types of things. But I've always been a believer in building up your skills and building up your projects because that opens the doors. So clearly you did it when you were also working as that temporary position, you also put yourself into that to open the opportunity. So if you did want to come back later, the door was open and so be it, it was there.
And yes, exactly. Yeah. So you're building a collection of these different skills because you never know. I always have the future is not black and white to me. I don't know where I'm going to be, but I know that I have accumulated as much knowledge as I can retain in a certain period of time. And obviously, in the last year or so, I've been hyper taking on information, which is fantastic. But yeah, you just have to be open minded, I think, in terms of careers. And if you are open minded, the world will be your oyster because thinking outside the box is really where the best jobs come from, and you're going to learn the most just being open to what's out there. Every opportunity, just take it if you can and just learn something from it. And if you hate it, cool, move on, do the next
Mhm.
thing.
And do you find that you has there been anything that you picked up from being the paralegal for that short period of time or through your degree that has been helping you in your current role?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Again, I never discount any learning that you do, even if it's not. A lot of people, I know they say, oh, you went to university. What a waste. You're not even working in your field. And that they don't necessarily say that to me, but they'll say it's like a sentiment in society. If you don't work in the field that you went to school for, that it was a complete waste. And I completely disagree with that and challenge that completely. Every skill you learn, whether it's research or just working collaboratively, hitting deadlines, there's so much you take out of that post secondary education that you can use with if you take the opportunity to evaluate what you've learned and review it and put it into good use in the future. So I absolutely am much more organized as having spending 4 years in university, having to hit deadlines for handing things in and staying up late and getting projects done. I wouldn't say I'm better at I haven't improved all my procrastination skills just yet, but I'm still that's a work in progress. But definitely, there's something to be learned everywhere you turn. So don't discount it and always take the opportunity to review what you've learned and try to apply it to what you're doing today. No matter what the job, you can find a connection.
Let's dig a little bit deeper. And you said review. And I think that's a really key word there because I know that we like to move forward, but we don't really tend to look back. So, what do you mean by reviewing?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're building sort of intellectual and personality equity, so all of these things are building upon each other as you grow and learn. But you don't really know that. You don't know what you have to offer unless you sit down and think about it. And the best thing that I could say to do is when you're feeling like you've done something and it may have been a waste of time, sit down and reflect on how you can take and draw out those skills that you learned from that opportunity. Everything is a learning opportunity. So whether it's a mistake you've made or a growth moving forward, had a success or you've had a loss, how you might look at it, there's always an opportunity to learn. But you have to take the time to actually sit down and look at it from that perspective. Okay, what did I learn from this? And then also, I'd like to practice gratitude. I am thankful for this learning experience because I won't do it next time. Or thankful that I got this little win and next time it'll be even bigger. But you have to kind of reflect on sort of what you're getting out of every situation and add it to your equity of your own personal growth. So I have this equity of all this information and it's fun to call it out and say, I can do this and this. And sometimes just say it out loud to yourself. I am capable of the following things. I have studied the following things and I'm learning from that. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. I know I kind of off on a tangent there, but
No, this is the stuff I love to hear because this is also an important part of building a career. It's the soft skills, it's the background, it's how you develop yourself that can go and you can take it anywhere. I journal, I'm like a nerd when it comes to note-taking systems on my computer. Like I could have a whole conversation with you about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, I completely agree. Yeah.
I keep notes of not recently. I've been doing it for a while and it's a program similar to Notion or Evernote or OneNote, but it's called Obsidian. And I've been building it up for the past like 2 years now. And I'll go back and I'll find notes that I have. And I'm like, I don't even remember that I did this, but apparently I wrote a whole 1,000 words on it.
You know what? And that's funny too, because I consider myself a big dreamer and I spend a lot of time. Obviously, we always have our cell phone in our hand. So, like you have on your computer, I have notes files on my phone. So, if something ever happens to my phone, I'm toast. But there are so many notes of thoughts I've had, things I've researched. I find an interest in something that might be a viable business in the future, I start taking notes on it. I'm a serial entrepreneur, I would say. There's always something I'm looking to get a little bit deeper into. And I keep those notes and I look back and I think, oh my gosh, look at the time I spent researching it. But it's just more knowledge from the knowledge bank. You have more things to talk about with people when you're in a networking event. You may,
Hmm.
you have
Yep.
something in common with somebody that you never thought you would ever talk to.
Yes. Probably you want to get those not just on your phone or have it synced somewhere. I would highly recommend.
You're not wrong. Yes. So the biggest ones, most important ones to me, I do email to myself.
Okay.
I'm a
That's
high
another
tech,
good
low
trick.
tech sort of person.
That's another good trick there. I actually, because I hand journal, like I handwrite, and then sometimes when I'm on a walk for, like you say, I have a phone, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want to forget this, and I'll just email myself it, and then I'll just like add it later on.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a big note taker, even with paper. So that is the only problem I have is making a filing system for something like that because I have notebooks after notebooks,
Mm.
whether it's working with clients or just ideas I've had. So yeah, that's going to be a project in the future, trying to go through all of that and figure out what I'm doing with it.
Have fun with that, but I'm going to shift the conversation back to more focusing on packaging, even though I love this conversation. So I wanted to know a little bit more about how you work in terms of your business. So again, this is like a black box for a lot of people about what the steps would be for packaging. So I was going to pick your brain about something. So let's just say a small business came to you and they wanted to sell a confectionery product, let's say, I don't know, fudge. And would you be able to talk a little bit more about what this process would look like and how you would work with the client?
Yeah, sure. So, say this fudge company, typically what happens is that people find me when they're working through their planning stages. They're already somewhat into it. They've done some investigating and they're struggling. So they probably hit a roadblock block by the time they probably hit a roadblock by the time they reach me. They're either stuck at something in their packaging realm, they have big questions or food safety. But they find me through the channels, my website, they may come across me through Google or one of the various places where my email is listed as a packaging expert. And they'll just reach out to me. And if they find me through my contact form on my website, I ask them and prompt them to give me a lot of details of the project and why they think they need my help. That is so that when we go into our first introductory call, I have an idea of what I'm getting into. And we have a discovery call. And it usually leads to just a conversation of determining the best way I can help them. So a lot of times they've got their recipes figured out and now they're just getting to the point of how am I going to package this? What am I putting it in? And sometimes they have ideas already, like they've gone to the big players like Uline or Amazon where they've picked something up and they've been selling 20 at a time or whatever, and they want to scale that up. So it usually just leads to a conversation of we just determine whether or not I can help them. Am I helping them by sourcing packaging? Am I assisting them in any of the other moving parts that they're stuck with? What they need to put on their label? How do they get a nutrition facts table? How do they sign up for GS1 if they want to get into retail? There's so many different moving parts to that. But a lot of times the issue is figuring out the best type of plastic, the best type of packaging to incorporate into their food business and how it functions. And then from there, they might look for other things like they've already been selling it at a local market and they're looking for printed packaging so they can take it to the next level, but they're not sure where to get it from. And that is the biggest gap that I think we have. Even though we have the internet, we have these ways of searching, the packaging world is so huge and vast that you have people who will work with smaller businesses all the way up to multi-million dollar packaging companies who, unless you order 10,000, 50,000 units at a time, they may not even quote you on the project. Finding that sort of, I'll be that liaison for them to figure out who they need to go to and to get it, because it takes up so much time of an entrepreneur. And so if you come to someone like a packaging consultant like myself, I can cut out a lot of those hours of research for you because I know where.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yes, because I can imagine that is a big difficulty with smaller businesses is that size as well, just being taken seriously by the big packaging companies. And maybe if you're new on your journey and you're not as sure, it can be a little more difficult for them as well.
100%. It's very intimidating world to get into. Knowing the language of packaging is something that my clients may lean on me for as well, because we're talking about different substrates. If you're not familiar with the technical terms, packaging is a science. So there is a lot of technical terms that go along with it. Even digital printing versus conventional printing can confuse someone. Most of the time, what I find is food entrepreneurs, they are very familiar with their food product. They know exactly how to make it fantastic. And that's kind of where unless they've worked in the food industry and they're familiar with the terminology. So when you're approaching these big conglomerates or these larger companies and you don't necessarily know everything you're going to need to provide them for information to get that accurate quote, or you think that they're willing to do 100 pieces for you and they're absolutely not, it can be very intimidating. So someone like myself who has been playing in this field for a long time, I can be that liaison, close that knowledge gap, and help to just feel confident that you're getting the best price. You're not just landing on whatever is available through Amazon or through a catalog. And because we have such a fantastic ecosystem of food manufacturers out there, especially in Ontario and Canada, North America in general, we want to be able to keep those up so that us as the consumers have way more variety of local made products out there. So this is my contribution to growing that ecosystem.
Okay. Okay. Huh. That also okay. So after being able to do that with the clients and such, I did want to also take this opportunity to talk about sustainability because it is such a big topic. And I know that also is a key part of co-motion. Let's talk more about sustainability. And of course, we're talking with the clients, let's just say the fudge business, just to keep things simple. How would you work with a client to if they want to make a sustainable packaging? What does a sustainable packaging even look like? Could we talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So sustainability is a hot topic, definitely in the food industry. There is this crusade against plastics and trying to make things more sustainable. And the first thing I want to do is educate my clients about sustainability and what that really means. And when we're making, the easiest way to be sustainable is to reduce what we consume
Mhm.
and not really buy CPG brands if we really wanted to be sustainable. But the truth is, we live in a very global market. We want to have national brands. We want to still be able to shop. Our consumer behaviors lend ourselves to, like, we're not going to make our own bread every single day. We're going to go to the store and purchase it. So
Mhm.
there is some sort of requirement for packaging, and plastic is typically at the top of that problem. But plastic is a very functional food packaging. It is leak proof. It offers barrier properties from oxygen and oxidation and everything. So very lightweight and low cost, and which can be super beneficial for starting out food vendors and food suppliers, so food manufacturers. So, that low cost when you're already competing against these costs in ingredients and the food ecosystem as it is, as we tend to lean toward on plastic for that. And the innovation is there for plastic alternatives like PLA, which is polylactic acid. It's an alternative to maybe PET in the plastic industry. So it's there, it's considered compostable in industrial settings. And our clients may choose to, the fudge company may choose, instead of a PET plastic to put their fudge in, they may go with the PLA compostable packaging. There is an additional cost to that. There's only so many varieties and sizes available for compostable packaging right now. As we grow the amount of people using compostable packaging, those numbers will obviously decrease and the cost will go down. But for now, it's really a matter of just understanding what you want to do with your food brand. You want to be sustainable, but you don't necessarily want to greenwash or make something that look like it's more environmentally friendly than it is just for the sake of marketing, because your customers will soon become wise to it. So, what I would definitely do with my client is just determine what level of sustainability they need to be at for marketing purposes for their client, as well as where they want to be in terms of their brand. Your packaging substrate, so the packaging that you put your food product in, coupled with your label and your ingredient deck, all make what's called a packaging persona. So if you're a fudge company and you're about gents and sugary treats, and the client that you may have, the customer that you may have, may not be so concerned about sustainable packaging. As if you are a brand who is clean label, gluten free, perhaps locally sourced ingredients, vegan, whatever it might be. If you have a lot of these attributes, you're marketing to a different group, which means that you probably do want to look for a little bit more sustainable packaging. So we want to determine that out because uh, if you're spending a lot extra on sustainable packaging, which it will cost more for sustainable packaging in a lot of cases, is it worth it to you in terms of, are you going to see that return on investment for sustainable packaging?
Wow, it's funny that two things that you wouldn't necessarily put together, but you do at the same time, just mentioning about the indulgence and maybe not thinking as much about the sustainability. I just think that's just interesting in its own right, just to consider the attributes. And it's amazing how the food packaging, how it's chosen can be just as important from a consumer standpoint of what they're purchasing than the food itself, at the whole point of them buying the item. So that's interesting.
100%. Yes. You have only a couple of seconds to, if you're in the retail setting, you only have 2 seconds or so to get that attention of that customer, have them pick up your product and maybe put it in their cart. And they're going to do a quick evaluation starting with their eyes. Then they're going to think with their stomach, and then they're going to read it with their brain. And all of those things work together to make that packaging decision, or sorry, that purchasing decision. So if you are not aligned, if you're a very clean label and you're packaging in plastic, your consumer is going to see that disconnect, and they're going to possibly either ridicule you on that or challenge you on that, or they're not going to buy your product. It can be just that simple. You will see that come up if you are a food brand.
And when making these decisions, how have you been learning more about the packaging space? Does this come through just having conversations with suppliers of packaging? Does it come from reading trade magazines? How are you looking to improve your knowledge to better help the clients as things continue to change with these shifts in packaging?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of information out there. I get a lot of information specifically from the suppliers of each substrate because they know their market the best. Each substrate, paper, plastic, glass, comes with its own realm of information, what they're doing for innovation, how they're making changes and growing, what the market looks like. And so you can get so much information when you talk to your suppliers. And I would say that most times a sales rep is going to be your best partner in learning. Even if you're taking this on yourself, you're not using a packaging consultant to figure things out. You call a sales rep, they know their market best. So I spend a lot of time chatting with people in different industries. I also do a lot of reading in the trade. There's Canadian packaging and several different other trade magazines that you can read. Typically, if you can get just a snippet of what's going on and what things are looking like. The packaging industry has changed even in the last decade. So you can see popular types of products, and you can see where people are focusing their attention on reducing waste or reducing plastic over packaging. So you can just gauge that mostly by staying on the pulse in terms of
Oh,
obviously social media and Instagram and all those things following these manufacturers.
I'm just thinking about all the places that you're working with clients, you're trying to help them to have the best product, but then you're also trying to help with food safety, and then you're trying to stay on top of new trends. It just sounds like so much to keep track.
It certainly is. There is never a shortage of publications to read. And I always do recommend that if one of my clients is working in a certain industry, that they sign up for a couple of newsletters, that they easily come to your mailbox, your inbox. You can have them automatically rule filed to a file so that you're not looking at them in your inbox all the time, but when you have time to go back and review. But there certainly is a lot to keep up, but it does keep my job interesting. It does keep me learning and engaged, which is what I'm looking for as an entrepreneur. Um, and get to have good conversations with people like you who I can share this information with and people who are actually interested. And like I said, when you're at a dinner party or a networking event, there's never
keeping it to the tone of keeping it busy and keeping track of stuff, you somehow also managed to find time to become a certified packaging professional. And I think it's from the Institute of Packaging Professionals. And I'll be honest, so I wrote a profile, like a career profile on packaging engineers, like back when I was in my undergraduate, and I knew that this was a certification and I had included it, but I was like, I don't know too much about it. Is this actually something that professionals in the industry use? So I'm like, I have to jump at asking you a little bit more about this to have a better understanding. So first of all, congratulations on
Thank
on
you.
your passing, but I'd like to know more. So tell me about that process and what's it
Yeah,
all about.
sure. So yeah, you're right. The international packaging professionals, it was something that came across. It was one of those opportunities that I noticed that my colleagues in Ferrero were obtaining. I want to work in packaging. They're doing that. I wonder if there's ever an opportunity for me. And years ago when I was working with them, they were getting this certification and I thought, okay, I want to work in packaging. They're doing that. I wonder if there's ever an opportunity for me. And it kind of stayed in the back of my mind. Can I ever do this? And I knew that at the time to become a certified packaging professional, you'd have to have 6 years. And obviously, when you're starting out in your career, you're like, 6 years? That will be forever. I'll never get that. But time goes by and you end up gaining knowledge and becoming really proficient in the industry. And I felt that with the business that I'm offering now, it was important to legitimize my skills. I could tell people that I've worked in the industry. I could show people the work that I have done. But we're a society that we rely a lot heavily on certifications or
Mhm.
degrees very heavily, to get legitimacy. So I just wanted to obtain this in order to ensure and trust in me with my clients so that they know that I have an idea of what I'm talking about. So the process was, you have to be in the industry for at least 6 years. And then you complete an exam, and then you complete a second exam, which was 3 parts of essay writing about the topics of food packaging as a whole. But I obviously tailored my questions specifically. The ones that I did choose to do on the exam were in the food industry. There is differences between food packaging and packaging for automotive and things like that. So there
Of
is
course.
different things, but the food industry is where I have always played. So that is I tried to answer my questions related to that. And it was a long process, but I'm happy to have gotten through it because, like I said, I can hang that up and show legitimacy that I do know what I'm talking about because I do work with a lot of incubator programs, not for profit and for profit. And, you do your introduction at the beginning, hi, I'm Lisa Cove. And this is why I am okay to talk to you, why I'm qualified to
Mhm.
speak to you about this topic.
And I can imagine it as well gives you a boost of confidence as well. You have all these, like what we were talking about earlier, these bits of pieces of knowledge that are all over the place, and you know that you have them. But I guess sitting down with that exam really was able to push you to really condense it all, answering those essay questions, and just give yourself a boost of confidence.
100%. Yes, I definitely did. And it also, again, going back to reflection on your knowledge, it gives you an opportunity to sit with what you know and to reflect on what you've learned over the past decade in the industry and really just, yeah, be confident in what you're learning, learn how to apply it to different situations. When you're doing a narrative exam, you're able to pull from examples of things that you've done. So yes, it definitely does make you sit down and really reflect on exactly what I have learned, even for my clients and doing projects for my clients or in the industry as a whole. So that was a fantastic opportunity for me. It's such a yeah, fantastic feeling when I completed it and just waiting for the results to come back. But obviously, when I passed, I was super excited and just hung that one up on the wall as another thing. And it won't be the last thing that I accomplish, I'm sure.
Oh, no, for sure. But I bet the students that are listening to this episode are thinking that the two of us are insane. Like, why would you be happy to be taking a test?
Well, they will crave it once they're out of the system, I tell you that, like, they will crave the education more than likely and always want most of the time when you're a learner, you're a lifelong learner for the most part, like, I think some of us, yes, of course, you get your certification, you go on to a career, but you're always going to be learning, so you might as well make it something that you want to learn about.
That's a good point, and I definitely agree with you. I don't per se miss the timed section of a test and the stressfulness of it, but I do somewhat low key miss just having that dedicated time to think for an hour about it, in a sense. I feel like it's a little, I'm a PhD, so I have biases about learning. Obviously, I'm a sucker for it if I'm still here, but I don't actually have to do any tasks, which I'm very happy about. But just having that dedicated time to think about a problem, I don't think we give ourselves enough time in life because we get so caught up with the routines of replying back to that email, this, and then putting it together. But just giving yourself time to think and reflect, you got to schedule it in.
Oh, I completely agree. And I think about that often when I find myself, especially as an entrepreneur, you wear every hat. So you're paying bills and you're sending out invoices. And there's always an email coming in about something that just this little thing that takes up so much of your time. And all of those things add up to being a full day sometimes by the time you're done all these little tasks. And you really have to take dedicated time. So when you can chunk out, I am working on this project. I am learning about this or that for this hour, it's rewarding and fills your cup if you're that type of lifelong learner, like I think you and I are.
For sure. I agree with you. And like with, if you do, I think students do actually understand a little bit because they have so many classes going on, but at the same time, those deadlines give them a reason that they have to sit down and spend the time towards it. Emails are just so many little things in today's society to do. And
It's so much, yes.
I know it's like,
Yeah.
but um, it gets us by. I mean, that's kind of the reality of being an entrepreneur like
That's right.
yourself.
That's
So
right.
unfortunate truth. Talking about entrepreneurs, I just wanted to take some time to do some like positive vibes and just talk about if there's
Yeah.
any awesome brands that you've worked with or just someone you'd like to promote, because I know that you're really into that type of space and really bringing awareness to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked with lots of brands. I wouldn't want to leave anyone out, but I definitely want to gear your listeners' attention to some of the things that came out of the last few years, last couple of years. There's a website called Made in Ontario where you can find Ontario made brands and where to locate them. And there's a lot of food brands that are sticking the Made in Ontario sticker on their packaging. And I really encourage you to get out there and try them. You know, you may pay a little bit more for a local brand, but this is a small business that's going to grow, and your support can help them get planogram right into that actual Loblaws or Sobeys. If you're walking through the grocery store and you see some end caps that contain Made in Ontario products, stop and take a look at them because there's so much good food out there. There's so many different brands of hot sauce and jellies, and just people who have these fantastic recipes who took the time to dive into it and get their brand out there. And it's challenging for them. They have to go through hurdles sometimes to get into that retailer. So I just really encourage you to look for that Made in Ontario sticker if you can and look for local brands. A lot of times, if you go into any of the retailers now, they have local, they're really promoting the locals. Look for that local made and just give them a whirl. I don't think you'll regret it. You know, sometimes you may pay a little bit more. Like I said, they don't have the scale to make things as affordably as some of the store brands and the common everyday brands that we know. But you will benefit from that because you'll read the ingredients and they typically have a better ingredient deck than some of the food brands out there that we know and love. And they're made with local ingredients or even imported ingredients that maybe you've never heard of. So you might have an opportunity at the local level at the grocery store to try a snack you've never tried. I work with one company who makes chin, which is a snack from Africa, which is delicious, but I've never heard of it before. So until I was able to work with some of these different food entrepreneurs, I never even heard of some of this food before. So you can really broaden your palate just by just checking out those local sections of your grocery store or your local wholesalers. If you know any that, you know, in Toronto, there's several wholesalers who sell local handmade or locally made products. So just check those out and yeah, you won't regret it.
Well, you definitely give me that push I need. I know exactly what you're talking about with that label because I walk by it at Loblaws all the time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I kind of just keep walking. I'm not gonna lie. It's just, I think it's because I want to make it more of it like an experience rather than just really promoting them and just spending the time eating it rather than like mindlessly just purchasing it because it's so easy to.
Hmm.
And I guess this talks about packaging in the store, but you can very easily go in overdrive. Like you're not your typical weekly items that you purchase. So it's sometimes a little hard to get out of that rut.
Oh, 100%. So like we in the packaging world, we know that people go into the grocery store with a list, they try to stick to that list. So our packaging's job is to attract people to even look at it. So a lot of times if you see it, you think, okay, that's an extra. You see the end cap that says locally made, you're like, that's extra. I'm just gonna get what's on my list. But yeah, I really encourage you just even to pick up one thing that's different every couple of weeks and give it a whirl, or replace one of your store bought brands with the locally made one and just give it a try. There's a lot of times where there's reduced sugars or health benefits to purchasing different locally made. And that's typically why they even got into it in the first place. Reading the brand story, they always have fantastic stories of why they got into the food industry as well. And why they want to sell their food product to you. So if you're in Ontario and you're looking for sustainability and you want to talk about sustainability, one of the greatest things you can do is buy locals.
Good point.
You can do that now with Loblaws.
Very good point. Yes. No, you know what? I gotta go check it out. It's fun, and like the whole sphere of Ontario, you could extend it out to a lot of places, but particularly on Ontario, like just the offerings of products that you just never would have seen existed 15 years ago that just there was no market for it, but now there's the hyper specialized local, or even highlighting the local ingredients that are here, or leaning on to how amazing diversity there is in Ontario and bringing items from other people's countries. Like the item that you just mentioned, I've also never heard of it, so I'm gonna have to ask you after what one you're referring to, because I don't know.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so you're right. And I found that I do love the Ontario ecosystem, even for restaurants, because you get to try food that you've never tried before. And if you're a foodie, it's the best thing that could happen. So
For sure. And because we're coming down to the close to the end of the episode, I always just like to take some more time to ask my guests. This might be a little more of a difficult one, but we'll try to strategically put it around your job. But I always like to ask, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's just starting out as someone in the packaging world, maybe a packaging designer or something similar to the role you're doing?
sure, yeah. So my advice in that would always be to lean into the fear. So let go of the fear of what you're doing. If something's scary, you need to dive into it regardless, because that's how you're going to grow as an entrepreneur. And network. So this is even though it seems very vast, the network that's existing in the food ecosystem in Ontario, Canada, and North America, and even sometimes globally, is not huge. It seems like it would be this vast sort of world that you're diving into. But when you start to really network, you get to know the same people in the same sorts of areas. And that's what you want to do. You definitely want to make yourself known, get your connections going, build your LinkedIn profile, because that's how you meet other people like you and people who are working in the industry, or people who might want to know more. Worked on my LinkedIn profile very strategically because I struggle with other types of social media. If you're a designer or you like social media, that's fantastic, but not for me. So I am going the old school route when it comes to building my business, and that's network and get to know people in the food industry, because you never know when you're going to need some support, and try to think about also what you can offer them as a mutual benefit before you go into those conversations. Look at your own equity, like we talked about, your personal equity that you have to offer, and then make that mutual connection and start building that right away. Obviously, lean into the fear, like I mentioned before, where everything is scary when you're talking about working in the packaging world. It can be quite intimidating. So definitely go for it. Sometimes you're going to have to eat it. As I say, like sometimes stuff doesn't go well. You will learn from that. You're going to celebrate the wins. You're going to accumulating all of that network growth and that knowledge base, and stay on top of what's going on the pulse.
That's all really amazing advice. But Lisa, it's scary to lean into fear.
I
But
know.
but I know it makes you grow. But man, it can be tough. And honestly, like from my own personal experience, and you said it already, like sometimes things will go wrong, but that doesn't mean everything's going to go wrong for the rest of your life. I've had experiences where I've gone to a networking event and I left pretty upset, not because I didn't put myself out there, and it was hard. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do it again. This time I know that I'm going to feel super uncomfortable. So let's try to come up with some comfort ideas, or I had some preset questions that I knew for next time. And I was like, even if I talk to one person and nothing comes out of it, that's okay. It was just scary to do it. So I think that's a win.
100%. Yes. And you're accumulating your growth in small wins. And that's fantastic because every time it's like very cliche to say, but it does get easier. And time again, I say to myself, this is going to get easier. And I still struggle with going to networking events because I'm nervous. And every time you think, oh, I'm going to do a public speaking event, it's going to be easier next time. No, you're still going to feel nervousness. But it's how to conquer that nervousness, being really confident in what you're saying when you're, and then, like you said, have those sort of cues, what
Mhm.
you want to say before you get there so you're ready. And, get to know the group at the networking event of kind of what people love to talk with themselves. So if you can have some knowledge base of who's going to also be there and you can lead with questions about what other people are doing, that's a good way to get yourself in and do it.
Just one other thing that I did want to ask a little bit more. You mentioned to think about ways that what you can offer to someone else. And I feel like that's a little bit of a difficult thing when you're a student. Do you have any recommendations about how a student can network without being like, give me a job? Like, how could they give when they're so new in their career?
Yeah. So even if you're new in your career, you've spent some time in school and accumulating those soft skills like we talked about earlier. So when you're in your beginning of your career, your eagerness to learn, I think, is going to be refreshing to an employer. If you're networking to get a job or to get a mentor or something like that, the willingness and eagerness to learn, I think, is kind of being forgotten in a lot of today's workforce. We see these
Mm.
things like quiet quitting and these terms that are going around. And really, what it is that you know that you need to build up your equity of knowledge and of skills that you can take with you in your career. My advice would be to just show that eagerness to learn and that gratitude of the time that someone is taking to talk to you even, and just showing that you don't know everything yet, but you're willing to learn it and show them that you have those soft skills and you can take them to the next level. You're not going to have all of that experience when you're going to the job market, but you do have an attitude, and that is going to be the only thing that you can control is your attitude and your willingness to grab on to every opportunity, and just reflect that in your networking when you're starting out. And more than likely someone is willing to take you under their wing. When they do, practice that gratitude, be thankful for those opportunities, and look out for everything that you're learning, reflect on what you're learning from each stage, and just take it to the next level every single time. And everybody's eager to just get a job and start paying back these student loans. So you have to kind of look at it from, you have something to offer, and they they have something to offer you, but not just in the form of money, but of this sort of equity that you're building on.
With that being said, thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to come on the show and help build up our knowledge equity. And hopefully, those who are listening to the show feel like they have learned some more, because I know I definitely have. With the last question that I have to always ask is, where can people find you in co-motion packaging?
Sure, yeah. So I am reachable through my website, www.co-motionpackaging.ca, or there's a contact form on there. I am available on LinkedIn and love to connect with other entrepreneurs, people in the food industries. Lisa Cove on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. That is probably the easiest way to find me. I respond quickly. I am a one-person operation here right now. Feel free to connect with me that way. You'll find my email address on the website as well.
Amazing. You can go check out Lisa's LinkedIn profile and you can see what she was talking about really building that up. So, once again, thank you, Lisa, so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, I got to learn more about the sustainability and packaging and everything you do, because you're doing some really cool stuff.
Thank you for having me.